Recording in progress.
So is anybody on Zoom? No.
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the August 14th, 2024 regular meeting of the Conservation Commission. Our chair is going to be absent today, so I will be acting as chair. And Talia and Brian, you guys are definitely voting.
Very good. Thank you for that vote.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from July 10th, 2024. Does anybody have any comments? No. I had one comment on page 8, I think. Just not sure if it's the page 8 that. Oh, it's actually page 8 of the minutes. So, yeah. At the last paragraph, second sentence, it says they, applicants, are starting fresh. That's all I had. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes amended with the slight correction that you stated.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Seconded, Stuart. And any other additional comments?
I'm just going to abstain since I was not present at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So we do have a couple of postponements. I can do them right. We can do them right now, so everybody knows, I guess. Or you want to wait? That works. Yep. Go ahead. I think you guys had seen the second agenda. So there's the our next item will be 100 Durgan Lane. But we have a postponement for the wetland conditional use permit. Does anybody want to make a motion for 913 Sagamore Ave? Yes.
I will make a motion to postpone the 913 Sagamore Ave wetland conditional use permit until the September meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Second.
Second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. And then they also are applying for a State Wetland Bureau application. Same postponement? Yes.
I will make a motion to postpone the State Wetland Bureau application for 913 Sagamore Ave to the September meeting.
And second, Brian. Thank you. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the wetland conditional use permit for 100 Durgan Lane. Does somebody want to speak to that?
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Brett Benson. I'm a principal at UTL. We're the architecture and planning firm working with the proponent. I'm joined by Andrew Hayes, representing the proponents team, Nick Aceto, our landscape architect from Aceto Landscape Architecture, and Patrick Crimmins from Ty and Bond. If you could go to the next slide, Kate. So just to remind everybody of the project, we are proposing 360 market rate residential apartments that consist of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. They'll be in a mix of 3- and 4-story buildings of 12 and 24 units each. There will be a residential amenity space incorporated into one of the 4-story residential buildings. That's a change from the last time you saw this project. 573 parking spaces, which is part of the zoning compliance, and 3 acres of community space, and low impacts to wetlands buffer, and an overall decrease in the site impervious surfaces. Next slide. So we wanted to start by reviewing some of the major changes that we've made since we first came to you all in April with our first submission. And we've really worked hard in response to your comments to pull the development footprint back, especially from the northern boundary of the site with the wetlands and the buffer in that area. That includes shifting several of the buildings further south, as well as moving the associated parking, sidewalks, and access roads further away from those buffer zones as well. Really results in a denser development that's more concentrated to the south and to the west. You could go to the next slide. Kate, thanks. We also wanted to back up just a little bit and explain some of the site constraints that we're working with on our site. First and foremost, as it regards to the Conservation Commission, that's the wetlands and the associated buffers. So those are outlined here in green with the wetlands, and then the buffers are outlined in a series of white lines relative to the different buffer setbacks. But there's some other constraints and obligations that come with this site as well, namely access easements and connections to neighboring parcels. So to the north, that's heading off to the Motel 6. To the south, that's off to the Home Depot. To the east, that's the connection to Durgan Lane. And then there's also the Hampton Inn, which this site surrounds on 3 sides. All of those access points are kind of embedded in the property and come with their own kind of constraints and obligations. There are also some power transmission lines and associated easements with those as well, and that's outlined in red, kind of on the lower portion of this site diagram. Next slide. And so now focusing a little bit more on impacts to the wetlands buffer. Overall, what we're showing today, and this is a little bit of an update from the package that we submitted to you all, but we're showing an 11,800 square foot reduction in existing impervious surfaces within the buffer, restoring that to pervious surfaces. Those are highlighted in these areas in the kind of lighter green color on this slide. Next. And that is part of an overall development objective of making this site much more green. So this is an existing big box retail store. It's surrounded by a sea of asphalt, and we really want to create a network of open spaces so that the future residents of this site have a more direct connection with outdoor space and the natural world, and one that really works to break up the heat island effect of this existing parking and retail site. And you can see here this illustration of all of the open space. This is not necessarily directly related to the wetlands, but an overall ethos of this development to make it much more green on this site. Next. And so what you can see here, this is our final proposed site plan. We really think of it as a very sensitively scaled development, one that finds the right balance between all of the zoning requirements that are overlaid on this site, some of those obligations relative to the easements and the existing conditions on the site, but also really trying to bring new housing and address the housing crisis that is in Portsmouth and throughout the region, but one that has a very kind of green and open character to it. Next slide. And just a kind of note about the circulation and access, kind of going back to that original diagram of some of the easements, all of those access points remain, and so that these important connections to the north, the south, and the east, as well as the connections to the Hampton Inn, those remain. The primary circulation for this site is highlighted here in yellow. And then there's a secondary consideration relative to life safety and fire truck access, emergency vehicle access. And we know that in particular this road that's along the northern edge that's highlighted in red came up during some of the comments in previous meetings as well as in staff comments. And we've consulted with the fire department. It's their preference to have this road in place so that emergency access to the site, that there are options and that it's not relegated to a single access point. And we really think that that road is quite important to the overall development. So we have a few more slides, and I'm going to hand it over to Nick Aceto on the next one. Thanks.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Nick Aceto with Aceto Landscape Architects. I'm going to share a few slides here to speak about the landscape design intent and some of the progress that we've been able to make since July, since last time we met. This diagram is illustrating some of those high-level changes that we've been able to make to further pull away from that northerly buffer and really out of all of the buffers. The green areas are, of course, the community spaces across the site, and we're going to differentiate a little bit of how those are more active use and more passive use. But this diagram here is illustrating the changes that we've been able to make. The magenta up to the north, the right-hand side of the page, is highlighting the rain garden space that we've been able to pull out of the community space tally. We've also pulled away the boardwalk that kind of bifurcates that space. We've pulled that out as well. We've also pulled out, you can see a thin strip of magenta along the top edge of the page there. That is impervious sidewalk that we've also removed, and along the edge, the northerly edge of the rain garden, we've also removed that sidewalk. And then finally, to the east, along Durgan Lane Extension, you can see that oval magenta area. I know we talked about last time we were here, that rain garden being an issue within the buffer. We removed that as well and rerouted the stormwater design to take care of that elsewhere. The next slide, if we go ahead to that, we really wanted to differentiate between the active and passive community spaces across the site, and really the landscape design intent and how we're differentiating those. So this image is really showing the active community spaces, which will be focused mainly on the interior of the site. We work closely with the team, the architect in particular, to site the buildings, create massing that really supports these community spaces interior to the site. You can see along Durgan Lane Extension, that tan area and those two kind of brighter green areas are common spaces and a plaza. And the intent there is really to use more formal landscaping, again, native species that you might find elsewhere in the buffer planting, but more formalized blocks of planting to define these outdoor spaces for gathering and for public use. And then if we go to the next slide, we're looking at passive community spaces here that's highlighted in the yellow areas within the buffer zones. Again, just to reiterate, this is an overlay on the current site plan, and you can see that within the darker orange areas adjacent to the wetlands that are highlighted in green, that's the 0 to 25 foot buffer. We have no disturbance there. No new impervious area or limited new impervious area within the 25 to 50. And then as Brett highlighted before, about 12,000 square feet removed altogether of impervious removed from the buffer zones. And that lighter yellow being kind of that transitional landscape area, some of which we're counting toward community space. And you can see in the next slide here, we have a couple of vignettes that show those design conditions and our intent there for the landscape. The intent is really to create an edge. We talked last time with the commission about defining that boundary and how that space will be maintained and accessed, and really how it's defined as community space. The landscape design intent is for that to be a naturalistic meadow, limited or no maintenance needed, limited lighting, limited impacts, and also limiting access. And we're doing that clearly here, how we're illustrating by incorporating a wood guardrail along that edge. We've pulled out this illustration is showing a little sidewalk against the parking. We've actually removed that from the plan. So again, limiting access and then incorporating signage as well to kind of help celebrate that landscape and provide some education about the buffer. And we're also incorporating evergreen trees there within the buffer to further limit access. And it's worth noting a lot of these buffer areas within the site are sloped, and the planting will be more of kind of a bunch grass type of character, so not comfortable to walk on. It won't feel like a natural place to stroll about. It's also probably worth highlighting here on the lower left, you can see a couple of images. Those are existing conditions today, so we just want to highlight that the improvement is pretty clear. We're moving a lot of impervious, a lot of surface parking today, and revegetating those buffers. And then the next and final slide for me is stepping back a little bit and looking at the space within the rain garden. Like I mentioned earlier, we've pulled out the boardwalks from that space, but we have incorporated some features that can be used and activated just within the rain garden. You can see that access road just beyond in the gray in the back of the image. But the boardwalk is pulled back, and we're incorporating an observation deck with interpretive signage to talk about wetland species, the rainwater cycle, and then one of our concepts is to actually reuse some of the granite curbing across the site today and incorporate that into the slope for some informal seating. And again, you can see the existing conditions down there to the left, lots of impervious and paved area. I think with that, hand it off to Neil to talk a little bit more about the stormwater and buffer improvements. Sorry, Patrick, excuse me.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Patrick Hermans with Ty and Bond. So Brett and Nick just, did kind of the 30,000-foot level of the plan view and highlighted all the improvements that we're doing within the buffer. And as Brett mentioned, that access road coming in from Motel 6, the emergency fire safety access that is preferred, has been kind of a discussion point amongst the commission and also within the staff memorandum. So we've created these exhibits. We zoomed into just this study area just to kind of demonstrate the existing condition versus the proposed and the improvement that actually is within this study area. So what you'll see here is a zoomed in version of that existing condition of the site. And as you can see, what we're showing in that green is the impervious surface in the existing condition that we are removing from the existing paved areas, which is a significant number. It's 6,788 square feet. If you want to go to the next slide, Kate. So again, this is the proposed design, and as Brett had stated, we did discuss with the fire department. Their preference would be for us to leave this road if feasible. But what's shown here is in the orange is what the impervious surface that is being added to the buffer area, and that's shown in orange. Certainly, you can see at the bottom where the drive comes in. That's kind of where it is that we're constrained by that drive, just tying back into existing. But more importantly, the access cutting up for fire safety reasons. That is 2,409 square feet of additional impervious in the buffer. But if you go to the next slide, Kate, I think you can see from this graphic that, one, we are pulling further away from the buffer. Yes, we have some small impacts to create this road, but overall, this is a significant net improvement from what is there from the existing condition. As I mentioned, we're removing 6,788 square feet just in this study area. And then there's that added 2,400 square feet, which is pulled a little bit further away from the buffer. Then you can see those green areas that are closer. So just within this study area, not the total 11,800, but a part of that total 11,800 is a significant improvement. There's 4,379 square feet of impervious surface that is being removed in this study area. Even with the addition of that drive. I know at the past meeting, the commission had asked us to study opportunities to maybe relocate that drive. We did look at it. It creates some real challenges. There's some significant grading issues if we were to pull it further away from where we are. Conceptually, we looked at it. Also, it has massive impact to the stormwater design that we have here. As you can see, this is the low point of the site, so we're trying to get that stormwater down to that corner. Moving the drive would significantly impact the rain garden design. We'd have to redesign the stormwater, probably eliminate a portion of the rain garden, if not all of it. That would kind of be counter to what we're trying to do here with the low impact design elements. So we still think that this is a significant improvement for this corner of the site. You can see right here, shown on the plan is straight from the ordinance. Where feasible, the applicant shall include the removal of impervious surfaces at least equal in area to the area of impervious surface impact. The intent of this provision is that the impact will not result in a net loss of pervious surface within the jurisdictional buffer wetland. So I think this just demonstrates that a lot of that improvement that we are including in the buffer in terms of removing impervious surface, that 11,800 square feet, 4,400 square feet of it is right here in this study area where this drive is located. With that, I will turn it back over to Brett to close out the presentation.
All right, thank you. So we just wanted to go through a couple of the points from our past meetings. We've really found this process to be incredibly helpful, and the project has gotten better each time. since we first presented this to you all in April. I just wanted to highlight some important numbers here, that the existing condition includes just over 61,000 square feet of impervious surface. And when we came to you in April, we were actually increasing overall across the site the impervious surface to 65,000. And we heard you all very loud and clear about doing our best to reduce that. So when we came to you in June, that was actually reduced by nearly 14,000 square feet, so down to 51,000 square feet of impervious surface. That was a big jump, represented a pretty major design change for the project. And here we are today. We've been able to incrementally improve that. So now we have 49,000 square feet of impervious, and overall a 12,000 square foot reduction of impervious since we first came to you all in April. You can see that, it has become, the changes are quite incremental at this point, because we've really compacted the site as much as we can. And there's just not a whole lot more that we can do within the constraints of the footprint, as I was showing you a little bit earlier. So just to go through a couple of the major points. So from April to June, we removed some of the active stormwater management in favor of a more low impact rain garden, which you can see in the site plan now. We've removed a lot of retaining walls from the buffer, and we've preserved some of the existing rain gardens on the site. We've also removed quite a bit of the building footprint and the parking field from the perimeter and replaced that with community space, passive community space, as Nick was showing you all. And then from July until now, we removed the rain garden by the Rotary, that entrance from Durgan Lane. We've removed the sidewalk and the north buffer, as well as restricted the use and access in that north community space buffer. As Nick was saying, we removed the boardwalk in the rain garden, and we've also removed community space from that rain garden and the adjacent sidewalk. So we do think that this process has been very productive and has resulted in a better site plan and where we are today. And with that, we'll conclude and welcome your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to clarify, since there is so much more information that we have not seen in plans or in writing, I'm kind of assuming you don't, do you want us to have this be more slanted towards a work session kind of atmosphere? And postponed, or what is your intention here?
Well, I'll leave it to the group to add some more. I think we want to hear your comments. Our goal is to continue on with this process and to be positioned, if not approval today, for approval at the next meeting.
So you need feedback.
Yeah, just to build on that, ultimately, we've done quite a bit of work, I think, in parallel to the meeting schedule to try to respond to the comments as we've received them. We've met with city staff on a number of instances as well to kind of detail, both our understanding of the constraints and the ordinance, as well as to walk through some of the different elements that we've presented here today. But ultimately, I think to answer your question, yes, I think we feel like we have a design at this point that, barring any further feedback, we would be submitting for final approval.
Submitting later.
Correct.
Approval. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And questions from the commissioners?
am looking for some clarification about some of the plantings and the tree size, because if I'm looking at your planting details, it looks like some of the deciduous and conifer trees that they might be as small as an inch to a foot. Am I reading that right?
I don't have the planting.
It's L5-03.
Yeah. Typically, I don't have the planting plan in front of me, but typically our minimum caliper is 2.5 inch caliper for deciduous.
Okay.
And usually 8 foot for evergreens, and that's height versus diameter of breast height caliper for deciduous. So that's our intent, if it's not clear.
I think I can speak for the commission when we would say, the larger,
Sure.
more mature trees that you
Yep.
can include in that plan would be great,
Mm-hmm.
so that, they really establish and.
Those are minimum, so oftentimes we get larger.
And I'm sure we probably talked about this already, but I just have a couple more logistic questions that I know have been talked about various meetings. Can somebody remind me about what the snow removal plan is? And if you are all still intending not to have any sort of fossil fuels on this site? And just some of those pieces. I apologize, I'm sure they're in the plans, I'm sure we discussed it, but I'm not sure where we're at considering so much has changed.
Neil Hansen with Tyne Bonds. So on the site plan, we are showing some limited snow storage areas. And then there's a note that once those snow storage areas reach capacity, that the snow will need to be hauled off site. Those areas are located outside of the wetland buffers, and we've also coordinated them with the landscape design, so we're not piling snow on top of vegetation.
Okay.
There's a second part to that question, was there?
About the no fossil fuels.
Yes, so there will be no fossil fuel combustion on site. All of the building systems will be all electric.
And just a follow-up question to that. Our city council it's on their agenda to look at a climate action plan that's going to be part of our city, I guess, moving forward. Have you considered, or you had it? I'm sure you haven't because it just became available, but I would say that might be another thing that you want to review. There's also community actions that are part of that and goals for the community in Portsmouth as a whole about our carbon emissions and things. So that would be great to see if, when you come for final approval, if you've sort of had a chance to look at that a little bit and consider that in your design.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Your questions? I had a question. You mentioned minimum lighting in the community space areas that are near the buffer adjoining. What is your plan for that? And it may have been in there, but.
There should be a photometric plan in the plan set that you can take a closer look at, but we're just providing zoning required minimum light levels within the parking areas for life safety, so no additional lighting within the buffers.
No additional.
Yeah, and any lighting, like I was showing the kind of active versus passive community spaces, any lighting fixtures within the community spaces will mainly be interior in those active zones, and they'll be pedestrian scale, like bollard level lighting or pedestrian scale lighting.
And I don't know if I read that they would be dimmed at the least, but possibly turned off.
I think that's something we need to talk to the lighting designer about, but typically on projects of similar scale, we would have controls that they would dim after a certain time. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions from people? Comments? So, as everybody's thinking, I'm going to say I appreciate all your changes. We definitely will need more information on this, and drawings with plans, including where plants are going to be planted, what the plants are going to be, the size of the plants. Things that are typically in a landscape plan on that end, and then things like that vignette that you had of the rain garden was great. It seems very conceptual, so we definitely would need specifics on that, where the boardwalk's going to go, what it's going to be made out of, height, plantings in the rain garden.
Sure.
things like that.
Can I just clarify on the landscape plan that you have in your package as well? So we're showing hatched areas for planting, and that's typically what we do. And then you refer to the schedule for the spacing.
Yeah, that.
When we come back before you, I believe the intent is to have everything quantified as well, so you can see the plant counts and then the associated layout. So you're not, even though you're not seeing individual circles on the plan, we're showing, the areas where they go and the spacing. So.
Yeah, and personally, and I don't know what the rest of the commissioners feel about this, but I think the more trees, the better. I know, especially in those buffers areas where you're have that access road in the back. It sort of shows pictures of, people sitting there on stone or whatever, looking out on a sort of a meadow, but anywhere that you can add more trees to that, more woody material, bushes and things like that would be great. The minimum amount of maintenance, and I think it was mentioned at the last meeting to kind of isolate the access as much as possible to sort of direct people into certain areas, and that's it. Would be good.
Mhm.
Just want to clarify, if you don't mind just going back to that last rendering. The observation deck that Nick had highlighted, that is outside of the buffer area. So just wanted to clarify that. So that component is actually not within the buffer.
Yeah, I mean, just to know where it is and
Okay.
everything, and its height. I mean, it's a great attribute, and it'd be good to know about, the details on it.
Mhm.
If you're going to use it.
I could explain that too if it's helpful. So the plan that you have now shows a boardwalk that bisects that rain garden. We essentially cut the boardwalk short, so we're just showing the observation deck is basically that first 20 feet of that boardwalk. Just to help, we'll come back with revised plans to show that more clearly, but that's the intent.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
I think we've discussed it a lot, the road, but I do have, I guess, a clarifying question about the fire access. I think that there was one image that showed a red arrow. I'm not seeing the page number on here. You had it.
Was that in the presentation?
It was one. Okay, yeah. So the important piece for fire access is that section with the 2 red arrows. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Otherwise, access only comes from the oval at Durgan Lane coming in, and this provides a second point of access to the rest of the site.
Right. And I guess I always thought that that piece would remain, but my understanding was that maybe the piece that goes around to the right that is existing could come up close to the buildings on the left and then connect with that red piece right up above. I would make an assumption that that is what you're saying would be costly to replan, and for that reason is not desirable. I'm kind of curious if we went back to the very beginning of this project, would that have been something that would have been feasible? Is it like really that right now it's not what you want to do, or is it like really just not structurally working? I think understanding that would be helpful.
Sure, and Patrick can speak to more of the technical details. I think the characterization of this road and where it is, if we were to relocate it, and we have looked at a reconfiguration, it has significant impacts on the stormwater management, and we're not actually sure that we can still accomplish the stormwater goals. One of the objectives that we set out to do following our earlier conversations was to put a low impact stormwater management system in place. Previously, we had an active stormwater management system. This change may force our hand to go back towards an active management system. So, I think that it's a question of feasibility, and ultimately, there's an impact. And is that ultimately, the path that, do we want to go down?
So it's kind of like what is more impactful essentially to the buffer, to have a more active management plan or to have the road in a different place. And maybe this isn't something that it's not a hill that we want to die on, but I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that too, I know you presented that you explored an alternative, and I think that the request really was to kind of show and demonstrate that the alternative isn't going to work, or it's going to not be effective for you on the stormwater. If you can do that for the next time too, to show the difference between what you are actually doing and what the alternative with it being outside of the buffer would be, narrative or whatever.
Understood. I mean, unfortunately, that's a full kind of re-engineering of our stormwater system, which we can study that. And if it is in fact feasible, I think that's something that, we can ultimately get comfortable with pursuing. But I think from our perspective as a development team, as an engineering team, we need to understand that if we're able to make that accommodation and reconfigure the road outside of the buffer, ultimately then we'll be in a place to move forward.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I'm not quite sure what you're saying there.
Ultimately, at the end, if we are able to remove this road from the current location and take it out of the buffer, that's going to be a full redesign of our stormwater system. And if it is in fact feasible, is that sufficient to ultimately move the project forward at that point?
Yeah, I think seeing what that would look like could be really helpful. Just getting I don't know.
Well, if you think, just trying to answer his question, which of course can't be 100% definitive because we can't give approval, ahead of
Oh, I see what you're saying.
final
Sorry.
conversation. But what I would reply, and the rest of the commissioners can obviously speak as well, that has been the last major sticking point that I've observed. There have been minor things that we want more details on, but in terms of things that are very material to what we believe are important objectives, and I will say this, I think you've done a great job, and I'm grateful for what you've done with each iteration, but from where I sit, I don't observe any other significant material issues beyond that, and I would be especially grateful if you'd look at that, and maybe you'll come back and tell us that you can't, but if you could, I think for me, that will make that project very complete.
Thank you.
Relative to that, I did mention the significant grading challenges that we'll have to try to deal with to make that work. And Andrew discussed the potential impacts to the stormwater. If we were to try and keep some sort of that rain garden, some low impact design element on the site at the corner at the low point there, that would have to shift into the buffer to work. So there actually we may be pushing impact further towards the wetland with grading. And I'm just trying to get the commission's sense if the preference is to have this small impact, which is still a net improvement as we showed in the study area, versus moving the road and having significant grading right up along the edge of the wetland. I guess I'm just trying to get the temperature of the commission, so if we move down this path, because it is a significant effort, are we going to come back and have pushback because we have buffer impacts from rain gardens in the buffer?
I think what we'd like to see is two options. One where you move it and potentially keep in this one so that we can see the difference and where the impacts are.
Okay, understood.
Yes. Jeff?
Can I ask sort of a side question? If you are describing that red line road as primarily for emergency access at the request of the fire department, has it been considered to make it a pervious
That's my question also.
surface so that it's not, so that residents living there don't see that as a way to access that point, and that it really is more just intended for emergency use only? I know they do that on some other projects where it's like a 10-foot path, but it's able to support a fire truck should it need to get in there. Has that been something that you have considered?
It isn't, because what we have designed with the rain garden achieves the same stormwater management aspects, and it eliminates the maintenance concerns that come with porous asphalt. Perhaps if there was a way to delineate the drive differently, but that maybe that could be an option. But just because we're already putting significant design and resources into that rain garden, which is going to treat that drive the same way the porous asphalt is, we didn't consider it for this.
Patrick, I can't imagine it, so that's a problem, and I don't think the other commissioners can either.
No,
It's
understood.
that you're going to have more of an impact with that road. And
Yep.
I love the idea of the pervious in addition to the rain garden, because that whole bit with access, and it's just emergency access, and the intensity of the use is a lot less. There's an added benefit that way. So it's just hard that a rain garden is going to create more impact than the roadway. I totally understand where the rain garden might have to go a little into the buffer.
I think it's going to go a lot into the buffer, but again, to Stuart's point, we'll study it 2 different ways so that we can show you options. Yeah.
And follow up too a little bit. You guys, like this cost benefit kind of thing was you had that other rain garden, and that was in the buffer, and we asked you to take that out. So I really appreciate that you did, but then it disappeared. And the alternative suggestion was, I think many of the commissioners were talking about that roundabout being an area where that rain garden could go. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit to that. I know you spoke about a few barriers to that in your mind, but and how the alternative stormwater management, where that, just an idea of where that is going.
It's what we've managed to do. We're able to make the grade or the inverts work such that it's tied back into the prior designed filtration treatment unit. So all the impervious surface from that turnaround is being treated through. We had to upsize the device, obviously, to accommodate this additional impervious surface, which is added, but that's how we're treating, and by eliminating the rain garden, we were able to make the grade work and get kind of creative. With respect to in the center, I think the biggest concern for me is snow. They're just going to push snow right into that.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, though,
But we were able to achieve it without designing the rain garden. We're providing the appropriate treatment. So that was our thought process there.
yeah, I just wanted to say my experience with the city, if you think the city is going to be doing the maintenance, I think that was one thing you wouldn't have control over that.
The turnaround is designed because of the city. There was a
Yeah.
request by DPW for plowing.
That they seem to be very receptive to, don't pile the snow here, because I know there's residents that say don't pile the snow.
Understood. I guess what I'm saying is we were able to achieve the
Yeah,
treatment
totally.
without the
Yeah.
added expense and eliminating the maintenance concern from the snow impacts.
Yeah, I get it. Yes.
I think I didn't fully understand if there was a thought presently about what Jess brought up. I mean, it seems, and I know you commented on it as well, that if that road is desirable and moving it is a significant effort, then if there were a way to make it a pervious surface of some sort, it wouldn't allow the same access through there except for emergency, but it would seem like it would be less impact and it would probably be more desirable from an overall design. And I just didn't hear what your team's thoughts were relative to that.
At the end of the day, I think, as an additional consideration, I think that circulation road is important for residential flow of traffic as well. If you think about the site as a whole, if you wouldn't mind zooming out, I think for the same reason the fire department would prefer to have that road, we would as well. When you think about the amount of burden that we are ultimately concentrating on, effectively one intersection, having a secondary point of access and exit, I think is beneficial for the site and kind of beneficial for the traffic network overall. So I certainly understand the comments regarding kind of a restricted use. But ultimately, I think there's a dual benefit of that access road, both for life safety as well as for general impact to the residential community.
Okay, thank you. I understand your perspective there.
And
Yes.
if I was wondering about that road too, it's existing, right? There's already a paved road there in that exact location, but it kind of goes right behind the motel. Like, it's a very awkward, so are you going to improve that and make it a more formal, like, that's the way to get to Trader Joe's or whatever?
The road
Am I-
itself, beyond the point of our site, we are not touching. effectively, we're tying to the existing road network that exists today, because that's not land that we control.
Yeah, because it's not really a proper road to,
Understood.
where you might want to go as a resident, so it is an awkward thing. So I guess you don't know what the plans are beyond your property. Okay,
Correct.
right. And then I guess while we're staring at this here, so we've obviously had a lot of discussion about that little red section and whether or not that little red section gets rerouted a little bit, because that's in the buffer. I mean, obviously the other area that's very much in the buffer is the parking area on the, the bottom. And I guess I'm also forgetting if parking can often be a pervious surface as well. Is that something that's been explored to try to address that area of buffer impact?
I'm sorry, you're referring to this
Yeah, exactly.
by the yellow portion?
Yep.
I think, the purpose of the yellow line here, I think, is to illustrate and highlight the fact that, these are access roads and paving area that exists today. So again, yes, while we are leaving that impervious surface in place, we are not exacerbating by any means the condition within the buffer. So, I think, as specifically as it relates to those areas, our intent is to preserve the character as it stands today.
Right. It will be new pavement, though, just to be clear, right? I mean, you're going to rip up what's there and put down new pavement that will be entirely impermeable.
Potentially.
Pavement.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Patrick, you can speak to that.
Yeah.
What's that? That's the intent, yes.
Yeah. Just so there are other technological sort of options for pavement that could reduce some impact there. But I mean, maybe we want to, as a commission, sort of prioritize a couple things, it sounds like, would be helpful here.
Again, I think, to Brett's earlier points, what we want to highlight is, we certainly understand the objectives and the goals here. And what we're trying to balance is, ultimately a limited and constrained site and being able to deliver this housing program for the community. And the reality is, of the 60,000 square feet, we are returning about 20% of that to a vegetated state, a pervious state, which we feel like is a significant benefit versus the existing conditions, which, I think, we spoke about this briefly in our prior conversation. The alternative to the residential program is that this remains a retail site. So the 61,000 square feet of pervious surface within the buffer stays as it exists today. And I don't mean that to be flippant, but I think that's the reality of trying to squeeze this site any further. We lose the opportunity to get the benefits that that we're showing today. Not to mention the additional 3/4 of an acre nearly within the internal portion of the site, which we are converting from impervious surface to pervious surface.
Yeah, there's just,
Yeah.
go ahead.
One of the reasons why these buffers and wetlands are important, one of them was mentioned by your team, which was the heat island. The other one is a rainwater buffer, and we have seen just recently, in the last 3 years, Vermont has had 5 100-year floods. We've been relatively lucky in this area. It's going to happen. And the more buffers that we have, the more that residential area that you're building will be protected. So we're not doing it just for the sake of please move it out of the buffer. There's a reason for that, and it's thinking for the future, because the climate that we built these infrastructures for does not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. And we certainly recognize that. And again, I think part of the reason why we are putting forth a proposal which reduces the amount of impact in the buffer is in recognition of that. And we are, as I mentioned, we are overachieving versus the existing conditions by about 20%.
And I would just add to what Stuart said. I mean, first I will say I appreciate all your efforts in taking into consideration all of the things that we've said. But I think the other piece of this, at least for myself, is that this is a very dense project. And while I appreciate you reducing all of the impervious surface, there are going to be, 700, 800, 900 people using this space constantly and having a lot more impact on that buffer and what's happening in that area, especially compared to now. Even though there's a lot of pavement there, there's not a lot of traffic, there's not a lot of activity. So for me, that's another piece in considering choices you're making in design is just the impacts that are going to be when people are living here are going to be a lot more constant and continuous as compared to what the site has even historically been, people coming to shop and then leaving.
Sure.
So,
I would just highlight, within the buffer zone, particularly the northern buffer, we are stepping out of that and we are restricting the use and access to that space as,
and like
as
I
a
said,
preservation mechanism.
I definitely appreciate your efforts and considering all we've said, but that's why we still have concerns about things.
And I certainly understand. I just I want to clarify because I think the impact in the buffer in that area is going to be greatly reduced and restricted. Further, from a traffic perspective, the residential program is actually a lower burden than the existing retail. Retail is one of the highest generators of traffic. So I just wanted to also note that the amount of residential density that we have here is still in fact less traffic intensive than it would be if it remained a retail site.
Then the current Christmas tree shop?
Than the retail use, correct.
Specific to this location?
Correct.
That's shocking to me, but okay, that's cool. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the other piece that I would note is, we are below the density that is allowed under the zoning holistically. At 360 units, while I do understand that there's a lot of program here, it's a lot less than is allowed under the zoning today.
Thank you.
Great comments from everybody. And I will, to add to that, I guess we have to kind of prioritize our comments a little bit, but to mentioning the heat island effect and all the impacts that this is having as far as our storm events. You have trees in there that are all very isolated within the, there's one tree here, one tree. So any tie-in with other vegetation between those trees would be great rather than just mowed lawn. And the other thing I would ask for is some follow-up. We do this frequently, within 2 years to make sure that the trees are still alive, plantings are still doing okay. If you could provide that, that would be great. So I don't know if there's not other comments or questions. I don't know if anybody wants to reemphasize any priorities. I get the feeling that the road is definitely a priority, possibly moving it back again, providing or possibly providing impervious surface and having it not be used all the time residentially. That seems like that's not really a desire on your end, so totally understand that. So we're going back to trying to relocate it a bit. Seeing a plan. I think there were other things that were brought up at the previous meetings that we've had with you, but I don't know if I think some of them are on the staff comments, right? And do other people? Do you feel like the staff comments or any follow-up with that at all? Usually?
Yeah, I think we already talked a little bit about things like updating the plan with the fencing, if that's the proposal that we're going for, so putting the split rail fence on the site plans, getting that sidewalk out of the final site plans that was proposed for there, showing where the final location of the boardwalk would be, and maybe a detail spec of what that educational sign might include. Not that it's in the buffer, but it might be nice to know sort of what information is going to go on that about wetlands.
Yeah, maintenance plan for the plantings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anything being missed? No?
So,
Anybody want to make a motion?
that driveway, I mean, at the end of the day, that driveway's been the primary area of focus for a long time. So I appreciate the team being willing to go look at that and see if there is an alternative to route that down, as we've talked about, without causing too much disruption to the overall design, because short of the couple of details that we want to see in planting and such, I think that would If that is in fact possible, I think that would get us very close to being able to, and we want this to move forward, at least I want it to move forward. I know the housing issue, I've told you multiple times, I like the design of this. It's got a few issues, but any project will. And I think you've done a good job of designing it and trying to meet the objectives. So just go give us your best effort to see what's possible with that last part of the driveway. You've heard us pound that enough times that you know that's the last mile, really. Please.
Thank you. I think we do a motion.
Voting, is that the? So, I will make a motion to postpone the, application for 100 Durgan Lane? Lane, till the September meeting where we can get the final drafts of all the plans and planting plan and maintenance plan and things that were talked about and consideration of whether or not it's viable to move that road or not, for the September meeting.
Thank you. Second? Stuart, thank you. Any more discussion?
Just other than maybe to clarify, I think we said this, but I don't know how much effort it will require, right? So we can ask for a whole bunch of things, but I think, Stuart, you said it. When you look at that, and grateful that you're going to, if you're able to come back, let's say you find out it can't be done, to the degree that you can show us the specifics of why it can't be done, not just we looked at it and it can't be done, but give us enough information like you've done with the rest of it, which I think has been very helpful, to understand what the constraints and impact are in trying to move it would be my ask, without asking you to jump through hurdles or create 5,000 more charts or what have you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? So, thank you. We'll see you
Thank you.
Yeah,
again.
thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda with our two postponements is the State Wetland Bureau application, new business, dredge and fill, major impact, 90 Maplewood Avenue, City of Portsmouth. Anybody want to speak to that? Bye, Talia.
Good afternoon, Commission. We presented this stuff, this project to the Commission, I believe, back at the April meeting. So I was just going to provide a quick refreshment of what the project is, and then go through there were 4 or 5 conditions that the Commission issued when it was reviewed for the conditional use permit before we went to the Planning Board. And I was just going to let you know how we address those on the design that was provided with the permit.
Can you, I don't know, did you introduce
Oh,
yourself?
I'm sorry, I
No,
did
that's
not.
okay.
I'm Dan Rochette with Underwood Engineers, engineering consultant for the City of Portsmouth. And I have Jake Stoddard here with me, he's the project engineer. Yeah, I apologize. So just briefly, this project is an outfall. It's an upgrade to the existing outfall over on North Mill Pond behind the cemetery. Capacity upgrades are required to prepare the outfall for additional stormwater separation work that's proposed over in the Fleet Street and Von Mall areas. The upgrade includes adding a 48-inch pipe to the existing pipe that's currently there, replacing the head wall, moving the head wall back inland a little bit to try to get it more into the bank. We are proposing some stormwater treatment. You can see the unit there kind of on the bottom, location of the unit on the bottom right of the, bottom right of the drawing. And as part of the wetlands permit process, we had added, and I think this was the biggest conversation we presented, was the marsh restoration kind of over on the upper portion above the outfall there, as part of compensatory mitigation for the proposed wetland impacts. And this mitigation area also provides some revetment for the the slope, the embankment behind the cemetery, that's kind of become a concern or compromise with some undercutting from the tides coming in and out over the years. So with that, some of the comments or the conditions that were provided from the commission. The first one was to install permanent wetland boundary markers. We've addressed this on note 15 of sheet P5. So if you move, I don't know if you want to show the note, Kate, but if you move ahead to 2 or 3 sheets. So that's P1. Should be the next one. Yep. So this is really the kind of a zoom in of the marsh restoration. So we added note 15 on the sheet that includes a sign that shows, I think it's an 18 by 24 inch side that would be mounted, that would show the restoration area. And on that sign, we would try to depict that 25-foot vegetative buffer. With installing actual markers into the ground, we were concerned, putting additional posts in there with the cemetery, we might be disturbing things we don't want to disturb. And also, I know sometimes you can put them on trees, but we're not quite sure what trees might be where as they relate to the buffer. So the idea would be to show that buffer on the sign that's depicting the area. Condition number 2 talked about a long-term maintenance schedule and plan. There isn't one yet prepared as part of this application. It wasn't necessarily a requirement for DES to provide that with the application, but the intent is to, in accordance with DES regulations, to prepare a 5-year monitoring plan using a certified wetland scientist for tidal areas. And that would be completed prior to construction. And once that plan is approved, that would be forwarded to the city for record. And the long-term plan will be, I guess, monitored and executed by a wetland scientist that the Public Works would go under contract for. Condition number 3 was adding notes or provisions about removal of soil and plant material. We added note 6 on the sheet. We did add language about if any invasive species are removed, that they need to be removed in accordance with local, state, and federal guidelines. I believe typically we refer to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation's guidelines on removing and disposing of that stuff appropriately. Comment number 4, or condition number 4, involved necessary approvals from involved property owners. The DPW is still working to secure easements with the property owners where work will be completed on private property. I believe there's 2 of them, and we're still in the process of working through that piece. And condition number 5 was a note about using conservation mix when we reseed impacted areas. And we did add a note on another sheet. I think it's P1, back on the first sheet you were on, Kate. But we did specify that conservation mix is used to restore vegetated areas within the tidal buffer zone. If there wasn't any, if it's outside existing pavement limits that we need to restore for property owner reasons, or if it's outside the marsh area. I believe those were all the conditions that were issued during or following our meeting, and that's how we addressed it. So I guess at this point, I will turn it back over to the commission.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's that last note 11, Kate, on that sheet.
questions from the commissioners? I had a clarification question. You had mentioned the condition that we had about the approval plan be the 5-year plan afterwards, and is that in? I'm sorry, I didn't go through everything.
I didn't refer to a note on the drawing. I did try looking to see if it was included as an actual note on the plan, and I don't think it's necessarily on this plan here. I think it's more of an acknowledgement that we know we'll still need to do that, and it'll come back as a condition of approval from DES as well. That'll be before we start work. We'll have to submit that plan to them as well.
So it wouldn't hurt if it approved, we would put it in just as a condition. It's not going to mess you up or anything.
No.
It sounds like it's a go-to. And I had one other question on, okay, I'm trying to figure out which one it is. It's the actual last site plan. So sheet 17 of 17, erosion and sediment control details. And just to clarify that you're just giving examples there of what you might use. It's not necessarily what you're going to use.
Yeah, the intent of those standard details is to provide kind of just to provide examples of what can be used. It's something that the contractors can use as a basis of bidding. When the project is bid and a contractor is selected, Kate, if you keep scrolling down, I think it's towards the end of the design package.
It's the very last one.
Sorry, it's very slow. This sheet?
Yeah, that sheet.
Yeah, so we include these as a basis for contractors to bid on as kind of minimum approved examples. Before the contractor starts, they'll obviously be providing a stormwater pollution prevention plan or a SWIP for us to will review. DPW will review. Those are usually prepared by certified people, and in that they'll propose the actual the erosion control measures that they plan on using that meets the requirements.
So I would just say, unless there's a real reason to use hay bales, that's probably not the ideal way to go. But so
Right.
you've got the socks in there too. So
Yeah, so I think a lot of contractors like mulch. They like mulch, mulch berms as well. You see those a lot used now. I don't know if mulch berms are the best solution for this space, but.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments?
I had a question. Maybe this is silly, but this is a huge packet, and embedded within it is a lot of information about the bridge project and the hydrology analysis. Could you explain what's the connection between the two projects, and are you looking for approval on both projects here today, or?
No, it's specifically just this outfall and the restoration and the marsh restoration. The references to the bridge project was because the projects were in such close proximity to each other. DES allowed us to use some of the vulnerability assessments and the functionality assessments, I think they're called. We were able to use one report because they were so close in proximity to each other. They're separate. They're separate projects.
But they're relying on a similar hydrologic analysis. Are they identical?
Correct.
And what is the status of the bridge project, just to know?
Good afternoon, Dave DeFosis, DPW. Some nuances of what parts of the bridge we're going to work on this season and what we're going to push off till spring. We got such a late start waiting for the Army Corps permit that we're now in a position that the construction might be phased a little bit. So I don't have a specific answer. I can't give that to you until Friday. But as it is right now, I just got out of the meeting, and I think we're looking at rebuilding the wall on the riverside at this point, and then doing the balance of the work next year. But that's not set in stone.
Yeah.
Ha ha.
Yeah. Getting there, though.
Pun intended.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we recommend approval of the State Wetland Bureau application for the dredge and fill and major impact for 90 Maplewood Avenue, with the condition that a 5-year planting maintenance plan as per DES guidelines be included in that.
Sounds good. Anybody second? Second from Brian? Thank you. And any other discussion? I want to really, I very much appreciate that you mentioned the conditions and went through each one of them that we had mentioned before. Kept
Yep.
it nice and simple and clear. So,
You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just for a clarification for me, so I kind of know my pieces moving forward. With the monitoring plan, are we going to be okay to kind of proceed as needed with DES and just kind of following those protocols? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick
Yeah, I think
clarifying-
our goal is just to know that that's part of your plan moving forward,
Yep.
is to monitor that planting.
Okay.
So do we want to word that stipulation as the same as what we did back in April, or just ensure that 5-year monitoring plan is
What
put
did
in
we say
place?
in April? You'll have to refresh my.
In April, we said a long-term maintenance schedule and plan be included in the permit application and submitted to the Planning and Sustainability Department that commits to long-term maintenance of the marsh restoration area and a commitment to ensuring a marsh migration pathway for marsh adaptation impacts from climate change on city-owned land. That's a long sentence.
That's impressive.
That's a run-on.
We were
Yeah. Dave, did you want to?
So I just want to, if the 5-year plan is what DES requires, then maybe we should just change the language to 5 years.
DES.
And the rest of it we're good with.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Is that good?
Easy peasy.
Okay.
second that.
Second that? Okay, that change is okay? Yep. All right. If there's no further discussion?
I just think it's a really cool project. I think it's super cool that Portsmouth is like invested in doing the on-site mitigation right next to the impact area and using really innovative techniques and pulling in expertise from around kind of the region. And so I think it'll be fun to kind of watch and see how this develops, and it could be an example for other places.
Yeah.
So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Forget what the, administratively, I forget what the number requirements are. Are we
For
still?
the quorum, I
Are we
think
still
we're
in
still
quorum?
at-
4.
Yeah.
It's 4.
We're good. Good
Yeah.
question, though.
Still good. It's a good
Yeah,
question.
it was
Good.
counted.
Good.
With a nicey.
Okay, so we're gonna have a vote, seconded, a motion seconded, vote is, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Too.
Okay, so the last one we have is other business. So, we have a lot of other business. I don't know, you wanted to start with grants and
Sure.
give update?
So it sounds like the HDC meeting is canceled tonight, so we could stay in here all night if we prefer.
Oh, boy.
But we do have a lot of other business items, but I'll breeze through these ones at least. So grants, I know I talked about, at least I think I talked about this last month, but Peter and I applied for 2 different grants this summer. The first one was from the Great Bay Resource Protection Partnership, and they do grants throughout New Hampshire and the Great Bay watershed that focus on restoration and like natural revitalization projects and things like that. And we applied for funding to revegetate the 25-foot buffer and remove invasives on the city-owned parcel, the teepee parcel. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's on Banfield Road, kind of right past Constitution, I think. But it's a little corner lot that the city owns, and there's some Jersey barriers there right now. But it is going to be the future site of a rail trail parking lot, stop, trailhead area. And there's a really nice pond right there that has some invasives that need removing, and it also is a point that connects Barry's Brook, it connects the Great Bog, it has a lot of really great sub-watershed benefits in terms of what it can access. And so we have funding to revegetate the first 25 feet of that with a variety of different plantings, and we're going to use some city staff labor as match for that to be able to get that in the ground. And that is sort of in conjunction with a bigger project that we also got funding for from the NHDES Coastal Program to look at two specific sites. One is this Banfield Road site, and another is a portion of Pierce Island across from the pool on the southern side, south of the parking lot, is having money to hire a landscape design team to go and design the 25-foot buffer replanting of those sites. So creating planting plans for both sites, creating an invasive species management plan for each site, and then also a long-term maintenance plan for each site of how to do upkeep, keep removing invasives, replant when needed, things like that. So we have funding for the planning of those two sites. And the grant that I just talked about before, Great Bay one, is the funding to actually plant one of those sites. And we're hoping to also apply in the fall for more funding to plant the Pierce Island site. So it's sort of a tiered grant structure of how we're going to get it done. But so far we're in good shape. But that should start next year. And hopefully we'll hear back before next year about the Pierce Island site. But if we can't get funding for the plants for those, then we'll be able to probably contribute some internal funding is what we're hoping to finish that project. But it will also include a lot of signage. So we're hoping for some big educational signs at these projects, at these sites, describing the projects, why buffer revitalization is so important. And a big emphasis of this project is that we really want these professional plans to be public and be posted on these large education signs and on the website to show residents sort of what some more simple designs could be for revitalizing your buffer and what types of plants you might need for a salt-tolerant buffer and for marsh migration compared to a more inland wetland freshwater source like the one on Banfield Road. So to give some options, and the hope is that over time we can build up sort of a library of free resources with planting plans to give to residents. So those are the grants.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Very good.
Nice job.
Yeah, so and then our wetland boundary marker update. As you know, we sell those in-house, and we paid, I think it was last summer, we ordered 500 boundary markers, something around there, 450 maybe. And we just broke even on those, so that's exciting. And we're starting to make money. I think we've made $10 so far, but we made up about $400 so far. So, and we still have plenty of signs left, so we're going to start putting that into at least our smaller conservation fund, our annual fund, which then rolls over into the overall conservation land acquisition fund. So that's some good progress. Yeah, that's those two.
Yeah, and then the other one was the conservation easement update, which I think you were going to give. Is that appropriate to give?
Yeah, I can start off
on what we've done so far, and then.
Yeah, I can give a brief timeline on whatever I wrote on. But so we also wanted to do a little bit of catch up with everybody on the SELT project, the Cavaretta property. And so just for a brief refresher, at the end of May of this year, SELT reached out to city staff requesting a meeting with the Concom. June 26th, we had the site walk, which was us and SELT out on the property. July 17th, we had our non-public with city attorney Trevor, and then right after that we went into our special meeting where SELT presented on the project, the contract, and sort of what they were looking for from us. At that meeting in July, we decided to make two motions: one, to write a letter of support for their LCHIP application, and also to recommend to City Council to expend up to $1 million from the Conservation Fund to donate to SELT. And so sort of some, oh, actually one last thing was August 5th, City Council had a non-public, that was last Monday, and the chair and vice chair were invited to attend that, and that was the same thing that we had a non-public for, a brief 25, 30-minute update of what was in the contract from city attorney, so it's for legal counsel. Upcoming August 19th, which is
Chair and Vice Chair of Conservation Commission?
Conservation
Or
Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
And
to
I
clarify.
believe just the vice chair attended that. And so this coming Monday is the city council meeting where they will at least start to talk about that. So CELT is going to present on Monday. I'm not sure they're super early in the agenda. They might be a couple hours in, but hopefully not. But that starts at 7 p.m. and we can send out more information about that after this. But they will be presenting on the overall project and the site and the different conservation opportunities, and they'll be answering any questions from the city council. And it's an opportunity for anybody from this commission and any members of the public to provide public comment. We won't be able to step up and talk during the presentation or immediately after, it sounds like, but we will have the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting during the normal public comment period for city council meetings, where there's more of a process for signing up at a sign-in sheet when you first walk into the room, and you have to give your topic of what you'd like to talk about, and that usually happens at the beginning of every city council meeting. So there's a public hearing period or public comment period that we can be a part of if we'd like to, voice any support for CELT and the project.
You can also, just so everybody knows, I don't know who does, you can also send an email to the full council and ask that it be included. And sometimes if I can't, which I can't always attend a meeting if I want to, that's how I do it. The form's right there. You can put your comments and then just check that you want it included as part of the public comment for that meeting.
That's a great point. Yeah, the deadline for that may be tomorrow or Friday. I'll have to double check on that. But if you'd rather not go in person and send support via email, that's a great option. And so the recommended motion, I think, for this Monday night city council meeting is that the city council schedule a date for a site walk for city councilors to go look at the property. And that can be open to the public as well. So if we want to go walk it again, that's up to us, or invite other people that we know to go attend that.
There could be, obviously there could be upside to having representation from the commission to support questions or thoughts that the council members have.
Yeah.
During the sidewalk
Yeah.
or on
That's what I'm referring to.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, the sidewalk
That's a great
specifically.
point, yeah. Both, yeah, and then that's a great opportunity where you don't really have to submit formally public comment. You can
Right.
one-on-one chat with city councilors.
Yeah.
So that's the motion for Monday, most likely, and we're hoping for that sidewalk to be end of August is what we're shooting for, so that at the next city council meeting on September 3rd, which is day after Labor Day, I believe. So it's it's a Tuesday and not a Monday. The expectation for that night is to finally vote on the amount of money and the motion that we sent to city council to expend up to $1 million. So hopefully that will be the vote that night if they don't have any more questions to ask.
Then that would be a great opportunity for public comment from us
Again,
too.
yeah.
Again,
So we got
I think.
3 big,
on September 3rd.
September 3rd, yep.
Yeah, and then I don't know, you already handed out the,
Oh, I can hand that out.
Samantha and I, with the help of Kate afterwards, put together sort of some ideas on this to try to be coordinated on the outreach aspect, at least as far as our role. So I thought it would be nice to share with everybody so that you know what CELT's doing and some of the messaging ideas that we have, and to brainstorm with the CONSCOM on what we can, what can be our role in this, what's appropriate, but also what is efficient and effective and has the biggest bang for the effort. And then also, I think on what you just got, there is on the second page, page 2, there's outreach plan next steps, and that starts with that August 19th meeting on Monday. And Kate added a lot of detail, which is really helpful on the process. So if you are going to make it to that meeting, this kind of tells you what to do. And then the other two opportunities for us, and possibly a third, but the site walk, definitely, like having us there and being able to comment or answer questions and show support. And then on September 3rd, during the public comment period. And then lastly, they are trying to schedule a meeting that is going to be in the Elwyn Park neighborhood, which I think is great, because those people are abutting this, and so that would maybe be the Urban Forestry Center. We don't know yet. I don't know how far that's gone, but that would be CELT doing that, and they have indicated, and again, if it's appropriate, for us to go to that, or for some of us to go at least to answer questions and help out a bit on that part. And I think the dates, the tentative dates for the site walk are on here too, under upcoming site walk for the city. They are going to, CELT is going to have, their website has like a landing page for this project. I think they're calling it, or they're also doing a press release, so that, and we don't know when that's going to go out yet, that they need to get approval from the city on timing, so that they just really want to get information out to people that is accurate, kind of upfront. So it'll be around the meeting as far as that's their intention, but they're calling the project the 100 Acre Woods, which I think is a great name, and the landing page will be called that. So there'll be a reference to the landing page and to anything else that people can do to kind of support this effort. So sort of Samantha really wanted, she was talking about to be like a call to action kind of thing. So people know what to do. I think it's a really good opportunity. Both Kate and Peter have said, we don't want to get up if we're going to do comments at either any of these meetings that don't want to keep repeating ourselves and wasting people's time. So if we can coordinate a little bit, or people have some ideas, or just even, you know what you're going to say, but if it's already been said, say, I really support that, and then add what you want to add. But looking at these sheets and some of the messaging, and other things that you think of, other avenues to get the word out, people
Do you think there is a role, because we talked about this briefly at Sustainability Committee, and there were members of that committee that are interested in this and want to show their support for this effort? Would there be an avenue that maybe that committee could, submit something, present something, be present for something that would be helpful based on what you've kind of done so far?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless there's a problem, it's another city committee.
Right.
There's not a conflict as far as I know.
I don't think so. I mean, that's maybe something we can send out via email to the Sustainability Committee saying, this is what we talked about at the Conservation Commission. If you'd like to come give public comment, and I can get the instructions again.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of them will be there
There's
anyways.
ways we can tie it into the cap.
The cap, yeah.
That could be.
Say that again?
I wonder if there's ways that we can tie this effort and potential easement into the climate action plan that's coming out. That's sort of our purview in the Sustainability Committee, is to really, support that effort. So there might be ways that we can look through and show connections of why this might be valuable from that perspective.
Yeah, Monday is going to be a big night because this is starting to go to the City Council, but also the Climate Action Plan is hoping to be adopted Monday night at City Council. So we're hoping that we already have a good crew of Sustainability Committee members and members of the public that can come speak to that, and then maybe touch on this if they're willing.
Yeah, I don't know, Jess, if that's
Yep,
a
I
good
can-
role for you.
Yeah.
Maybe, I can send this to you. And
I got it, so I'll take it with me and I'll consult some of the, not so that it's a quorum, but maybe there's some way we can engage Sustainability Committee a little bit
You can
to,
send an email out too.
Yeah.
like you said, to kind of coordinate comments so that we're not all just saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe, and people's personal perspectives too, I think would be really valuable.
Yep.
So,
It looks like in this last part, support for public comment, there were some brainstorming on how to educate the public to be able to help support this proposal. And I see the Portsmouth page is mentioned.
Big question mark.
That's me, right?
Yeah.
So if, I think that would be, well, and that's not even any bias or anything. We regularly, UC we regularly post things for the city posts on there. So if someone smarter and more informed than me on this topic would like to write some sort of overview of what this is, because it'll tons of eyes will see it, but I'm guessing that a good percentage of the public has no clue what this is about at a very high level, that this is actually happening, and that there are these different plots, and what's the value in that. Something to that effect could certainly go out, and it probably would cause a few people to show up and say, yeah, I support that, that sounds good.
And timing on that would be before the meeting, kind of, the 19th?
I would think that between, two meetings, the
First
kind
and
of
the
the first and then the one where there's the motion, maybe both of those, maybe, I don't know, a week and a weekend ahead is usually good for people. People look at that page on the weekend and on, I can't remember, I've looked at the other days, but the weekend is a big day where we put stuff out that we want people to pay attention to. I think it would be great for the council to hear from just some general members of the public beyond what they might hear from us, that they know we support it.
You know, it can be really fun for, especially if there's going to be a lot of people coming to a public meeting like that, is to have some like visual thing that everybody does to kind of show solidarity. So even if they don't come up to speak, you can still kind of look out in the room and see, oh my gosh, there's a lot of whatever it is, red bandanas or sunglasses or some little symbol of support. And I wonder, like some little thing that had like an outdoor theme or even a Winnie the Pooh theme, right, with 100-acre wood. I'm trying to like brainstorm what could be the thing. Sometimes I've seen ones where people bring rubber duckies because they're promoting a stormwater improvement project or something. I don't know, something like a little memorable. Could be kind of fun.
An acorn.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. I love that.
Woodsy the Owl.
Yeah.
And in that article, we should do the same thing that I mentioned when Kate was speaking. We should note in particular that if you don't have time to attend, because a lot of people don't, and particularly when those things run until 10, sometimes 11 and 12, that sending in the reference to the page where you can submit for the full council to see. I submit things there regularly, and I know they see it because I hear from them. So that's a even easier way. It's not as visible, but it ends up being in the final meeting documents. So.
Well, and SELT clearly knew how to get people to show up for meetings, so sort of there could be a lot of people doing kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And is there concern that, I guess I wasn't at the city council meeting, are we concerned that there's going to be some hesitation, and where do you think it's going to be coming from?
So can't really say, you know, it's hard to tell. And one thing to clarify too is we can't really share anything at all that happened at the meeting, so.
Because of the non-public part of the meeting?
Yeah, so.
But in general, so without any disclosure of the private meeting, in general, these have come before, and this is one. What has been a general, has council been generally supportive? I don't know the history of these. Have they been generally supportive? And if there were questions or concerns in the past, in general, what were they?
Oh, before the non-public meeting?
Well, even there's
past
however many,
Other
there's however many
projects.
parcels, right? This has
Yeah.
come,
Yeah,
maybe
past
you
projects.
don't know either, Barb, but I don't know the history to know, well, in general, what sorts of things would they be concerned about?
Yeah, it sounds like Peter actually was looking up sort of the history earlier of what the fund has funded, and it looks like 4 or 5 projects in the last maybe 10, 15 years, well, 20 years for the Great Bog. So the Great Bog, the Maxim property, Coach Road, there was Sagamore Headlands had some conservation fund funding, and the island in Sagamore Creek also had some conservation fund going towards that. I have no clue of what the history of the council has, what
And-
they've added or questioned, and this is probably a
A
new
different
council
council.
since
New
the last
council,
one.
I guess if
Just
the
2018 or 20.
price tag, which I haven't seen the
Yeah.
details of that, but if the price tag caused monies to be spent well beyond what the conservation fund could provide, that would probably be the greatest concern, right?
Yeah, I think right now it's probably, I'm not sure the complete history of the fund, but I think it's probably at a number that is the highest it's seen in a long time. And from what Peter researched, it looks like the past properties that put money towards their conservation, the highest was $350,000 for, maybe that was the Great Bog, or one of these properties, that was the highest amount. Others were 20,000 here or 50,000 here. So $1 million definitely is probably one of the biggest numbers that
That's what I was wondering.
has been pulled from the
That
fund.
seems like a big,
It's a big
Yeah.
number, but the money's in the fund, and if we don't use it, it just sits there.
Right.
yeah.
And so it's our opportunity to make sure that those 100 acres don't get developed.
Yeah, I think it's, I
Yeah.
personally think it's great.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other history of it too is that the 1.2 million is what we've had in there for a long time. That was money that, and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was in current use. So communities usually have a percentage or the full amount of current use put into a conservation fund, and that is allocated for conservation projects, land acquisitions, and
Yeah.
things like that. So it's not only targeted for that, but it's like additionally, we did, ask for a bond and have had those another million
Yeah, which is
in addition.
interesting point to bring up that too, because that extra 2 sets of 500,000 was requested and put into the CIP 2 years ago, a year ago, and I'm kind of wondering my own self is like, what's to stop us from requesting that again in 10 years, and maybe even a little bit more. So even if we're maybe depleting a lot of it, there's still going to be opportunities in the future to replenish if we plan for it now, maybe.
there's opportunities to replenish the fund,
Mhm.
but there aren't opportunities to find another 100 acres in Portsmouth.
Great point.
That's your talking point, right?
That's
Yeah.
really, that's,
Yeah.
that's the most important
Well
piece.
said.
So, and to clarify a little bit, Brian, you had said with the social media Facebook page, are you saying just do it after the first meeting or do something before the first meeting that weekend?
I would put out probably the exact same message before, like a week ahead of each.
Each meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at
Before-
the deadline probably of the first meeting.
The first
On Monday.
meeting is
On
on
Monday.
So
Oh,
this
is that-
weekend.
Yeah, I guess I'm losing track how far we are into the month.
Yeah, it's pretty condensed.
The 19th.
Yeah.
So this weekend for sure, right?
Yeah.
Because people might.
Well, and if we can't get it out until the next meeting, I mean, that'll still be impactful if people, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know how many people will come and speak, because as much as I wish that were to happen, if you know the topics in Portsmouth, some of which are very, very, very critical, people will talk a lot about it on social media, but they won't come
They won't
and
do it.
speak. And the people who do come and speak, I'm not trying to be harsh or anything, but they're the same 5 or 6 people that speak all the time. So I'm not trying to downplay it, but I would bet what would happen is the few people that I know that are conservation minded, if they see that and they go, oh, great, we could add this, there's a higher probability that they will do what I do, that they will send a message to the council as a whole, which lets them know that they're supportive and why. So that has as much impact, I think, as stating it at the podium. So it's just a way of saying if we get something out that explains what it is and it's coming to the council and they should hear from the public, I think it could definitely get a few people to put their voices out. We certainly can.
You want, I mean, there is a press release coming out, we don't know when, but from CELT, and so that really does a good job of explaining it, and it will lead to their webpage too, and then so maybe an intro into that, kind of, like, from our point of view.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we could, if that explains it very well, the post that we would put on the page, it could just be a very, a much shorter overview of, hey, this important thing is coming to the council, and here, at a high level, are the benefits or whatever, and then we can link to that other information and say, if you want to know more about this, have the good thing, when people see those kind of things, at least in my experience, they want to know, like, oh, well, is that going to be a whole lot more money that the city's going to spend that's going to impact my tax dollars at some point? So the biggest thing about this is somebody being altruistic with their land, where some significant value is coming our way without substantial spend from the city budget or additional monies being raised that uses monies that we have for this very purpose. That's how I think of it anyway.
I think that's a really good point, yeah, to show that.
Yeah, so you don't have
The money's
to
already
advocate
there.
any
Yeah.
spend. We're just saying, public, please advocate that you would like to take advantage of this good situation to further the conservation land around the city without having to pay more tax dollars to do it.
Okay. So we contact you?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
just send it to me.
Okay. That sounds good, really good. And then your idea of having the people, like, that might be more for the second meeting when they have, right? Would you
When they have
think?
the vote
When they
in
have enough
September.
information and they're going to vote. So we could talk about that more at the next ConsCom meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could also talk to CELT too, like they might have a little idea already in mind, or
Okay.
something that we could just kind of piggyback on.
Yeah, I think our next meeting will be after the September 3rd council meeting, so,
Oh, because we're in August, right?
yeah, so we might have to send out information via email about what color to wear or a
Yeah.
memento to bring.
I mean, I'd be willing to just reach out to CELT
And they could
see if
include
they
that
have-
in there.
Cause I mean, I think they are gonna probably tell their people too, right? So we might
Yes,
all wear the
they
same
are.
color.
That's perfect.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, and so,
Any other actions on this at all? People, we'll see some of you on Monday?
I'm going to try.
You'll at least hear from
Yeah,
Me.
at least at the start, right? So.
perfect.
Yeah, because it was a little bit like sort of coordinating and saying, there are this many members of the Conservation Commission that are here today to support it, since they haven't really seen that, us coming forward,
Yeah.
other than the vote, so.
That's part of our mandate, right, is to kind of steward this fund?
Sorry?
It's part of our mandate is to steward this fund.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the council gets to sign off, but
Yeah, I'm hoping a bunch of us will say something too, in addition to writing things.
and that doesn't jeopardize our ability to vote later on it. Like, I know sometimes there's like, if you've
think
been
we're
too
gonna have to
vocal, you
vote.
haven't.
We won't be voting, we've kind of finished our
Done.
side of that.
Yeah.
Unless, for some reason, city council kicks it back to us for further review, which I don't see them doing, because we've made a pretty unanimous decision. Yeah.
All right, and then you had one more item?
Sorry, real quick, we have Davis Brush online, who's joining us from the New Hampshire Student Conservation Association. And I'll just briefly say that Peter and I have been working alongside the New Hampshire Student Conservation Association the last month and a half to potentially work on a footbridge project in the Great Bog, in the really wet area of it. And the Student Conservation Association has an opening this October for a potential project that they could do in Portsmouth, and we're thinking that would be the perfect opportunity. So you may see that come in as a permit next month, and potentially a DES permit as well if we can squeeze it all in time. But we invited Davis here tonight to briefly give us a background on the Student Conservation Association and any further information he has on what they do as an institution. He's on Zoom. So Davis, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yep.
Perfect. So thank you for having me. My name is Davis Brush, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for New England for the Student Conservation Association. And the Student Conservation Association started in 1957, and since that point has been working to do land and trail management across the U.S. And fast forward to 1994, and the SCA started the New Hampshire Conservation Corps in partnership with AmeriCorps and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Department of Parks and Recreation, with the state of New Hampshire. And the idea was to help get a lot of younger folks out doing land management activities across the state. And since then, it's sort of spidered out to the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources being the main partner. And then the other half of our field projects, or conservation hitches as we call them, which are 11-day project periods that we run throughout the season, are made up of conservation commissions, White Mountain National Forest, other nonprofits. And the idea is, one, to be a little bit of the workforce development for these individuals coming in, and we give them all the training that they need and support on the back end from the staff. And right now, Zach Kolach, our field specialist, has been with us for the last, I want to say 8 years, but has been in the field doing these types of projects for the last 17 years. And this project that we had been looking at, the Great Bog, would be adding roughly 612 feet worth of bog bridging, which is 102 6-foot bridges that would be placed out above on those wet areas, so that'd be more enticing for the community to come out and utilize that space. And it was similar to what we did in 2021 with Northampton. And with Northampton, we were looking at, I want to say it was 4,803 feet of new trail with 788 feet of similar bridging, where it was just two simple sills with the walking tread, 2 boards on top, in line with the trail. And with this, we are looking at getting a crew out there. I want to say it was October 1st through 11th, and that 11-day period. And with that, we'll provide Portsmouth with our insurance binders and have Portsmouth added as an additional insured on that. And then also looking at bringing all the tools and equipment that we would need to do this project. And Peter went out with Zach Kolach already to do the site visit and has gotten the estimates to Peter for the rough cut hemlock that we recommend for this, because it's going to be in a wet area, and trying to speed up the permits with DES so that we can potentially do that this season, and if not this season, maybe look a little farther down the road to next year or beyond that. So does anybody have any questions at this point?
Doesn't sound like it. No, this is awesome. It's definitely needed, for sure. You guys are great to get the money to do this and to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Davis. And we probably should mention, like Davis said, if we can't get the permitting in this fall on the tight timeline, then we can look at next year too. But we already do have funding available as a line item in our CIP funding for the planning department to do trail work. So that could cover this pretty easily
if it moves forward with the commission and state. So
This would be really, really cool.
yeah, it would be so much better. I know it's a slog getting out through that wet part right at the bottom of Heather Lane. You go down the forest, and right at the bottom is always just those huge pools. So, yeah. Thank you, Davis.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Okay, if anybody else?
I skipped one by accident.
Which one?
Sorry. On's a volunteer day. Really quickly, next Wednesday morning, we're doing another Great Bog. A lot of Great Bog this year. Great Bog trail clearing project, if anyone's interested in joining us. But Lonza has about 10 workers that had to do some volunteer time, so they wanted to come back out and clear out the other side of the Great Bog with the yellow and the blue loop trails. So we'll be out there from 9 to noon next Wednesday, if anyone wants to join us. And that's it.
Great, thanks. Jay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Got that.
I'll second that.